Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Wendy Dillard here. Today is Wednesday, December 27, 2017, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And Wendy, we were just talking off air there about how cold it is. Here in Connecticut, it is cold, and it is getting colder to the point where on Saturday morning we are anticipating temperatures to be, are you ready for this? 3 degrees.
Oh my God, that's Fahrenheit. 3 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, that's cold. That's really cold.
It actually sounds worse when you say it in Celsius.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I haven't looked it up to see what it would be here in Dallas on Saturday, but I'm sure it's not going to be 3.
No, I wouldn't think so. No, but the good news is, I think I mentioned a number of shows back that we ended up our landlord ended up replacing the heat pump on our unit last spring, actually. And when they replaced it with a better quality unit so that, among other things, we're getting much lower heating bills and cooling bills than before. So I got to feel good about that, and I do feel good about it because this time last year, if we had had temperatures like this, I would have looked at the thermostat, and the thermostat would have shown not only that the heat was running, but that the auxiliary heat was running too because it just couldn't keep up. And today I was looking at it, and there were a couple times where it was on, but most of the time it was off. Well, that means my bill is a lot less than it was last year. So that's good news.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So even in the midst of a cold snap, it's still good news.
It is good news. It is good news. Because, you know, it doesn't have to be cold in our hearts or inside of us. It can always be warm there.
Oh, absolutely. That's very true. And
I know, that was a little cheesy, but, you know, I thought I'd say it anyway.
Well, we just finished the Christmas holiday. It's appropriate, you know. That actually fits in very nicely. In fact, it fits in with our topic.
I do feel like I have a very warm heart right now.
Well, it's good. But, I mean, it fits perfectly with the topic because you're the one who said we didn't do enough with it yesterday. Let's do it again today. And it was all about the warmness of the heart.
Exactly. Yeah, because our topic now today is going to be more expressing love, acknowledgement, appreciation, and celebration. Because I just can't get enough of it. It feels so good.
Neither can my cat, actually. He just came into the room, and he's begging for attention because he just loves those expressions of love and appreciation.
Aw, I'll bet, especially when you're petting him.
Oh, yes.
So one of the things that kind of spurred this on for today is yesterday the UPS truck came by my house. And now I buy a lot of stuff online, so like UPS and FedEx, they know me personally. All they have to do is see my street address. Yeah, we know where that is, you know. Mm-hmm. But I had no idea because I'm like, well, I wasn't expecting anything. So, you know, thanked the UPS man and looked at the package, and it was an envelope. And I'm like, wonder what that is. Well, I didn't even bother. I could have, but I didn't think of it. I didn't bother to look at the from, and I just opened it up. And inside was a Christmas card. And so I opened it, and it was from my boss. And that in itself was shocking to me. Not that it should be shocking that a boss would send something, but he didn't last year. Not that you have to do it every year, but it was really completely unexpected and quite the surprise. And so I read his handwritten sentiment, which was extremely kind and very appreciative of all that I've done for him, you know, in this last year. And he says he didn't know where in the world he'd be without me, which I thought that was really sweet. But then I got to tell you, there was a gift card in there. And I've received gift cards of $25 or $50 from coworkers, and I'm going to say this on the air. It was for $200.
A bit of a shock.
That blew my mind. Yeah, I've never gotten that big of a gift from anybody I've ever worked with. And the reason I'm sharing this story is because the essence of what the gift was, both the card and the gift card, sent a message to me of expressing his appreciation of the relationship we have and what I've done for him in a way that I think is so fitting for him because he's been my boss for 2 years. Now, I've been at this company for 10. So he's not the one who interviewed me. He's not the one who hired me, which means he doesn't know my resume. And it was kind of like my old boss moved on to something else, and this new guy came in, and he didn't know me. I didn't know him.
It's like he inherited you, sort of.
Yeah, he inherited me, and I kind of got stuck with him. That's how it felt. But, I mean, I wasn't looking at it from the negative side, but, you know, we're just kind of thrown into this, and we didn't have a whole lot of choice about it. And so, you know, it took some time to kind of find a rhythm in working together. And, you know, all of last year, I kept trying to figure out, does he like me? Is he glad that I work with him? Because I'm an executive assistant. I work very closely for him to support him and my whole team of like 45 people. And I have always been accustomed to somebody in an authoritative position that could at least acknowledge what I'm doing in a way that I knew, yes, he's happy with what I'm doing. Now,
Okay.
I did know he could easily tell somebody to their face or even on the phone if he wasn't happy, because he told me about how he would do that with different people on our team. And there were some times that he didn't like certain things I did, and he had no problem telling me, I don't want you to do it that way, I want you to do it this way. And he's an ex-military guy, so he actually, get this, he was the captain of the Queen's ship in the UK.
Oh, my.
I mean, that's a pretty big, you know, title.
Yeah.
And so just learning to listen to him through his British accent has been, you know, quite the task. But it's like I finally got he's got British idioms, and he's got metaphors, and he's got things that I'm like, should I know what this means? He goes, nah, it's a British thing, never mind, you know. But anyway, all last year, I just couldn't really determine if he really was happy, quote, being stuck with me. And that's how I felt. Like maybe he just feels he's stuck with me. And I would talk to some of my other management coworkers, and they said, well, you know what, Wendy, we're all thinking the same thing. I said, yeah, but he promoted you. She goes, yeah, but I still don't know if he likes me. Like, I don't even know if he was glad that he promoted me. And so it's just funny because we're all like, we can't tell. And so over time, we would talk amongst ourselves, and what we came to figure out is he just doesn't use words to express himself, not when you're talking to him one-on-one. And probably by the beginning of this year, I went, well, maybe he does like me, because when he sends out emails that go to like 40, 50, 80 people, he says really nice things in there about me. I'm like, I don't think he would make that up. And he didn't have to put that in that email. But the fact that he did, it's like, okay, I guess I should take the compliment and be thinking he really does like me. So it caused me to think about how we all express our love, appreciation, acknowledgement, celebration, etc., in very different ways. And so when I received his Christmas card with such a generous gift card, I really took it as a sign, like, he really does appreciate me. He is glad to be working with me. He does like me.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Or
Yeah.
at least he likes what I do for him.
Right.
But it's amazing. It's taken me 2 years, and that act on his part, for me to really receive that message, or because he doesn't express it in my language. And so I don't know if you've ever heard the book by Gary Chapman. It's called The 5 Love Languages.
I don't know that one, no.
This one is fascinating. I read it I read it while I was married. And Gary Chapman talks about how there are 5 different ways that people express their love and appreciation for each other. And oftentimes, and he was like either a psychologist or psychiatrist, or he saw clients, you know, therapeutically. And he talked about how if your love language was different than your spouse's, then oftentimes you could actually be miscommunicating without realizing it. Because let's say, I don't know what your love language is, Walt, but let's say you go out of your way to plan a special, you know, evening for Louise, and you just tell her, hey, I'm going to do a surprise, be ready to go out, wear something nice, and be hungry. And so you take her to maybe her favorite restaurant, you know, on the top of some building that twirls around, and it's really special and really expensive. And then you take her, you know, to some fun place afterwards, maybe a jazz club. And to you, this is like this huge act of love and kindness towards her.
Okay.
And she may go, and of course, again, I don't know the two of you, so I don't know if this would be accurate, but I'm just going to come up with a scenario. So she may go and might be complaining because it's too cold out, or because the restaurant that twirls, 360 degrees is making her nauseous, or she may be like not happy with the dinner, and she's like, there's nothing on this menu that like I really want to eat, and of course, if you're thinking you went out of your way to do this, you'd be really disappointed listening to these comments. And then maybe afterwards, you're like, okay, let's go to the jazz club. And she's like, no, I'm really tired. Can we just go home? Now, to me, this could be a very typical scenario in a marriage relationship. But if she didn't realize that your love language was called acts of service, or I'm sorry, I think that one would fall into, I'm looking at my cheat sheet here. Let's call it acts of service, where you're doing something special for somebody.
Okay.
And she didn't know that.
Yeah.
Then she would have just, destroyed you.
It's interesting you should mention that.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's interesting that you should mention that because we have between us a really interesting dynamic where food is concerned. And we ironed it out right at the beginning of the relationship. So it's never cropped up in the way that you're describing there, but it could have. Because my wife has very discerning tastes where food is concerned. And there are only certain foods prepared by certain people that she likes, and there are other foods that she could just, take it or leave it, and there are still others that she wants to have nothing to do with. And the most difficult thing from my perspective is trying to predict in advance which one is going to be which. Which I did point out to her early on. In fact, it also has the same kind of problem when it comes to just making dinner at home. I mean, one of the things that she loves is, if I can make dinner instead of her making dinner, because our division of labor is typical. She does the dinners and I do the cleanup and, that kind of thing. So she loves the idea of me making the dinner for her. But my problem is I can pick something that I know is on her like list. But if it's not on her like list for today, she won't want to eat it. So what I learned to do early on with her was to kind of pin her down on what would you like today? What would you like right now? And I'll make that. But if I try to do it the other way around, it's like you described in your scenario, kind of. I know that there's like an 80% chance it's not going to work. And I've always been a person who liked to go with the odds rather than against the odds. So that never really appealed to me to have that kind of option there. That's why we kind of developed our own way of handling that language situation, which was basically, okay, I'm not going to try to guess. Tell me what you'd like to eat. Because the one wonderful thing about my wife, there are lots of them actually, but one wonderful thing about my wife is that she is not a game player. I mean, if she wants something or if she wants to express something, she doesn't hesitate, and she does it in a way that even I can notice. I mean, typically I am not the most observant person. In that sense, I'm a typical male. I mean, unless she tells me in advance that she's going to the hair salon, I don't notice the hair has been done until like 3 days later. It just doesn't. It's not part of my visual field, right? So it's appropriate to have somebody in my life who is as obvious as she is. But it made it really easy also at the beginning, particularly of our relationship. Like if she wanted a hug, she threw her arms open. It's very obvious what you want when you throw your arms open.
Yeah.
It's always been like that.
Easy.
Yeah. So it's always been like that from the very beginning with us. And I think that it was stuff like that we did that kind of smoothed over any of the difficult patches that could have happened. But you're right. If we didn't have that kind of thing that we worked out, that kind of thing that you described could have been a problem and could continue to be a problem today.
Well, and so let me tell you what Gary Chapman says the 5 love languages are, and then I've got another good story.
Okay.
So they're words of affirmation, which that would mean where you tell somebody with your mouth, with your words, things that you appreciate about them or things that you like about what they do. Then there's acts of service. That's the second one. And an act of service is doing stuff. It could be a husband choosing to vacuum on, which that to me can be the ultimate gift that a wife receives. Vacuuming or, getting the oil changed in her car or, she could make his special dinner. So it's doing stuff.
Right.
Then the third one is receiving gifts, where I think that one's pretty obvious, where you literally buy or give a gift to someone.
Right.
The fourth one is quality time, where, that one's about literally spending time together for the purpose of bonding, not just doing stuff that you have to do and you're angry at each other, but where you're really spending quality time, like date night.
Yeah.
And then the fifth one is physical touch.
Okay.
Where, like you hold hands when you go out, or, if you're in your bed together and you rub your feet on the other one, or something where you're literally being skin to skin. Physical touch is the fifth love language.
Well, I have to be careful with that fifth one, because if it's with cold feet, that doesn't work too good.
No. So, okay, here was a story. When I was married, my mother-in-law, who was a very sweet woman and really loved to, she let me know right off that she really liked me, but I noticed that she loved to give me stuff. Even while while he and I were dating, she would give me things. And she would give me clothes. They weren't the right size, but she'd give me clothes. And then if they were the wrong size, because she worked at a retail place, I'd feel really bad telling her I need a different size. And she would do everything she could to find the right size, But she was constantly giving me things. And I got to tell you, it made me really uncomfortable. Because to me, if she gave me a gift, I felt obliged to give one back.
Oh, yeah, right.
But if she gave it for no special reason, I didn't know what I should buy her or when, or if she'd be, offended because I was returning the favor. Well, when it came to Christmases, she was always giving me gifts, but they weren't things I liked. They weren't things that were even my taste. And like I hardly ever wear makeup. And one year she gave me this gift box of like a gazillion different makeup things, tons of eyeshadows and rouge colors and lipsticks and whatever and nail polishes. And I looked at my husband, I said, does she not know me? Does she not ever pay attention? Or is this a hint like I should start wearing some? I don't know. And after this went on year after year, it was like every year I felt like I was going to disappoint her in some way because I didn't know if I'd be able to come up with an expression of gratitude that would equal whatever her gesture was of giving, knowing I wasn't liking what she was giving me.
That's a tightrope right there.
Pardon me?
That's a tightrope right there.
Yeah. And so one year, I find this book about the love languages. And as I'm reading it, I went, oh, my gosh, she's number 3. How she expresses love is through acts of gift. She loves to receive gifts. That's how she knows she's loved. And in turn, she gives gifts because that's how she shows love. And that completely changed how I think about things with her.
Okay.
Because I went, oh, I don't need to look at the actual gift itself and determine the meaning of whether I like it or not. It has nothing to do with the object she gives me.
Very good.
It has to do with the act of giving.
Yeah.
And every year afterwards, I could graciously receive her gift because I then knew this is how she shows her love to me.
Yep.
And like, so I'm going to go back to my situation with my boss. Because my number one way I know I'm loved is through words of affirmation. I had been seeking his verbal words for 2 years, hoping he would say, Wendy, I'm so glad you're the person who's on my team because I love working with you. Or you do this thing so very well, better than anybody else. Or just anything he could tell me of an affirmative thing would have given me a sense of certainty that he liked me. Because words of affirmation are a big deal to me.
But you weren't getting those.
And I wasn't getting those. And I've never gotten those, not one-on-one. I get them like third hand, like when he sends an email with a compliment in it. And so I was thinking about, okay, I'm not exactly sure what his love language is, But the fact that he sent me a gift and he put the words in a card, I went, I think this is somehow expressive of how he expresses his appreciation. And
Sure.
And I noticed he seems to be able to do it with words that are kind of like distant, like it's too close if he's just talking to me on the phone. And this could also be a very British thing, because British people are a little bit not touchy-feely with their words and their sentiments.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just thought it's really interesting how we all find different ways to express our appreciation to one another.
Oh, yeah. This whole idea, too, of 5 different love languages, 5 different ways of people expressing themselves is both, it's like any kind of a list, because you feel like sometimes you're being pigeonholed on the list. But the other way to look at it is, well, you don't have to be just one. You can be more than one, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You might have a primary, a secondary, some that mean nothing to you, but yeah, you can receive love in all sorts of different ways.
So when you look at it that way, then it becomes, to me, a very good tool, a very useful tool, because now I can ask myself, okay, which ones apply most readily to me, which ones apply most readily to my wife, and now I can start to see a lot more about how our dynamic works. Before that, obviously, I just went with, well, this is what I'm used to. No particular labels, no boxes, nothing like that. But like if I go, I just did a copy and paste of the list from a website that I found, just because I couldn't remember everything you were telling me. And as I'm looking at them, I'm realizing I do some more than others, and she does some more than others, and it's the combination that makes the relationship work so well, makes it so satisfying. It's a good relationship that we have, and we just think about things a little bit differently, perhaps. But for instance, you mentioned service. I forget how you phrase it. I'm not seeing it in the same way here.
Acts of service. And I'm going to say all 5 again, just so as people are listening.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. That way I can write it down too. Sure. So go ahead.
So words of appreciation.
Right.
Second one is acts of service. Then receiving or giving gifts, quality time, and physical touch.
So 3 is gifts, 4 is quality time, and 5th is touch.
And I have a great story on physical touch.
Okay.
A number of years ago when my father was still alive, my mom and dad were just really in a tense place in their relationship, and she was, confiding in me that she can't get him to, respond to her, and he's so cold, etc. And I had been learning about the love languages, and I thought, I'm just going to experiment with this and see where we go. And so I was over at their house, and so I was with my parents in person, and I just said, Mom, Dad, will you listen to me for a few moments? I'd like to share an idea I just learned. And they said, okay. So I shared with them about love languages. And I said, I pretty much am certain which each one of your love languages is, just because I've known you all for so long and so well. And I said, Mom, I believe yours is words of affirmation. I said, because what you're really seeking from Dad is that he says kind things to you. And she said, yes, that's totally what I'm looking for.
Sounds like
and
a fit.
I said, Dad, you really are triggered to feeling warm and fuzzy with Mom if she'll just be kind enough to touch your hand or stroke your arm or put her fingers through your hair when she's talking to you. And he just kind of looked at me like, how did you know that?
Yeah, right.
And I think as a man, he kind of didn't want to admit it. But I just said, can we play with an experiment? And they said, all right. And I said, Mom, I want you to, they were sitting across from each other. I said, put your hand on Dad's hand and just talk to him. Whatever it is you've been trying to get him to take in that you feel like he's not heard you. And she did. She touched his hand. And she said, Rick, I really feel that when you do blah, 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 that, this happens and that happens. What I'd really like is X, Y, Z. And I literally watched my father's countenance get, I don't know how to say, he shrunk down. In other words, instead of being cold and posturing himself to be distant from her, it's like he sunk into her when she touched him. And I said, Dad, how do you feel about what she said? And he responded with like this beautiful tonality in his voice that was very caring and compassionate, something that my dad usually didn't speak. I mean, normally he talked in a very brusque kind of way. But it's like I saw like this miracle in front of me. My parents were communicating effectively for like the first time ever, it seemed. And so I just said to them, I said, here's your touch point. Here's how to communicate. Mom, you're great at initiating stuff. Just remember to touch him or stroke him or be in some way literally, you know, kinesthetically where there are sensory nerves in his body that can respond when you connect with him and then speak. But I said, don't yell something across the room or don't expect that he's going to connect, because I said, Dad doesn't connect unless you touch him. That's just Dad. And he kind of nodded his head with this big grin like,
Yeah.
like, I like it. Do some more of it.
Yeah, right.
And so over the years, it was fun because if I were over at the house, I'd watch my mom walk up to my dad, and she'd just stroke his hair, and she would talk to him. And when she did that, he responded so sweetly. But if she called him from across the room, he like blew her off. Now, that's a pretty extreme situation, but it does model what that physical touch did for him. And she was able to receive the words of affirmation when she was touching him.
And now that I have the 5 of them, I while you were explaining all that, I was actually typing them out so that I could have them to reference. And as I'm looking at them, I'm seeing why my relationship with Louise works so well. Because I'll do it in both directions. First, me to her, both of us want to spend quality time, and we do it every night. We spend every night together. Every evening we'll have dinner, and we may just be watching a movie together, but we'll do something together. And we actually often will say, you know, geez, let's have a conversation about something, because we love it when we have a conversation about something. But every evening is quality time, every time. Physical touch is important to both of us. It's really big with me. She knows, and she's known this from the beginning, that if she wants my attention, all she has to do is just touch me in certain ways. I'm like, okay, you got my attention. What's up? Not a problem. Just tell me what it's all about, right? Gifts given and received. I'm not sure either one of us does a lot of that. I think she probably wants a little bit more than perhaps I've given. So that's something that I can pay more attention to. But since I've been with her, I have learned to do that. And that was a big thing, because it was not something I ever did very much of. So that's been not a major part, but a significant part. Acts of service, that's been really large, particularly for me to her this past year, because with her gardening business, she was just, you know, basically going full bore continuously and virtually working herself into a state of exhaustion. So, I mean, I literally took over large chunks of the housework just to take that off of her head and off of her shoulders. And she loved that. She kept, you know, appreciating that over and over again. And that leads me into words of appreciation, and we both do that. That's a really big thing between the two of us. So, and she does acts of service too, and we both do that. So that's the thing that I notice most. We tend to do, with an exception here or there, we tend to both do the same things.
That's really nice.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, if the two of you like both have the same love languages, then that should make for a long and healthy relationship.
And it has been. We've had all kinds of other difficulties to work through, and the relationship has sustained us through it. So there's no doubt. Yeah, there's no doubt that it's effective.
You know, here is an act of service that would be so awesome of our listeners if they would be willing to share our show with others on social media and let, you know, their friends that want to live a positive life know that we exist. And another act of service would be to, Subscribe to our channel.
Yeah.
And tell them how they can do that, because you do that better than me.
Sure, yeah. They can do that at the website, loatoday.net. There are links all over the website. It's not hard to find them. They're pretty large. They're pretty bold. They're pretty, you know, brazen. We don't hide them. They're right there where you can see them.
Well, and you know what's funny is yesterday offline, you and I were talking about what I'm about to share, which is I said I'm really kind of looking for more of our listeners to give us feedback to let us know that they're enjoying this and that they're listening. And I realize now it's like words of affirmation are my form of evidence as to how I know people like what I'm doing.
Sure.
So if anyone's listening and you want to show me the love, would you comment on loatoday.net and let us know what you're liking? Because that would just put a huge smile on my face.
Or you can just do it through your favorite social media channel, because that also spreads the word to everybody else at the same time. So, I mean, if you're a Facebook user, for instance, just put something on Facebook that you're enjoying the LOA Today show, and not only does that put it out to us, but it puts it out to your friends as well. So you're basically doing two things at once there, and we love all that. So that's all good stuff.
Yeah. Yes, we do.
Good point. So, nice segue, by the way. I like the way you did that. Really nice.
Thank you. I was working hard to work that one in. Well, did you have more you wanted to share? Because then I had another story.
Just that besides subscribing on loatoday.net, you can also subscribe on your smartphone through, if you're using an iPhone, you can do it through the iTunes Store. Also, the built-in podcast software on your iPhone, you can do it there. In either case, you just click the little magnifier glass, and it gives you a field to type into, and just type in LOA Today. It'll pop right up, and then you can subscribe right there. If you use a Google Android phone or a Samsung or any of the other Android phones that are out there, you can also subscribe. In this case, you just do it by going to Google Play, which is of course, the Android equivalent of the iTunes Store. Google Play is where you find everything, right? Well, you also find LOA Today there as well. So one way or another, please do subscribe if you haven't done so far. And by the way, Wendy, people are subscribing. I was talking with Joel about that earlier today, because he sat in for Cindy this morning. And I was realizing it as I was saying it. About 6 months ago, I do keep some analytical, I track the analytics of, what's happening with how many people are downloading and, how many of them are unique and all that kind of stuff. And about 6 months ago, for every unique listener who was downloading podcasts, on average, they would download about 4 podcasts. So they're playing about 4 shows a month. This past month, that number went up to 16. So people are definitely subscribing. That only happens if you're subscribed, because there's no way you keep going back to the LOA Today website each time in order to find out what the show is. You do it because it's coming into your smartphone and you're listening to it on the podcast software. So,
Absolutely.
Bravo to all of our listeners who are subscribing, because you're really doing it. You're making it happen, and you're giving the love when you do that. So thank you very much for the love.
And, I'm an Android user, and I have subscribed on 2 different platforms because I was just trying to test it and see what was out there. And there's one application called TuneIn.
Okay.
Many radio shows are on there, and I looked up LOA Today, and boom, I'm able to listen to us through TuneIn. Also through going to the Google Play.
Right.
I just typing in podcast, and I came up with something called Podcast Manager, and that was another one I was able to subscribe to. So there's probably lots of different platforms.
There are.
So my point is, if you're looking for us, we are findable.
Yes. I have been working diligently to make that happen, to make sure we're findable almost everywhere. And fortunately, it's gotten to the point now where if you're in both Google Play and the iTunes Store, that covers 90% of it, and we're in both, and we have been for a while. So yeah, it's good news.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, so back to our topic here, something that I think is quite interesting is when 2 people are just getting to know one another, I think we kind of all have a perception of what it means to woo one another, and we typically share all 5 of these love languages in the romance period of a relationship.
Well, maybe.
Then as the relationship goes on in time, we tend to move toward just the ones that are our natural love languages, and we kind of drop the rest of them. And so what I think is interesting is in the beginning of a relationship, you may think that the person that you're kind of falling in love with is a perfect match for you because he speaks your love language. Now, you might not know that that's what it is, but you just feel this warm and fuzzy because he's hitting it left, right, and all over, or she is. But then as the relationship wears on, you might start to feel like, hey, you used to do this such and such for me. How come you don't anymore? Well, the answer may be because it's not their natural love language.
That could be.
So,
And the reason I said maybe to what you were saying, because what you're saying is certainly plausible, but I can also see another side to it because it's what I did and what I went through and what Louise and I went through together. Before I met Louise, I was a very unsuccessful dater, meaning that finding a relationship and Walt Thiessen were not used in the same sentence. And that went on for about 20 adult years. So it was a long, long time. And I actually gotten to the point where I really didn't think I was ever going to have a long-term relationship, let alone get married. During that time period, I would have to say that my use of love language, as you're describing it, was probably very minimal. As I'm thinking about it, I would do almost none of it, particularly in the early stages of dating. I was a very standoffish kind of a guy, which is not really easy to warm up to. It's pretty hard to warm up to that. I didn't realize it at the time, but it is. Now, after I met Louise, Louise was wonderful for me because all I had to do was express my interest and love for her in like little ways. And she, like I said, she's the one who just makes it really clear, right? So I want to hug his arms thrown wide, like, okay, even Walt understands that one. And that's the kind of thing that happened very early on with our relationship. So I think that's why our relationship worked. However, over time, as I got to know her better and better, and we talked and talked and talked, and we explored all kinds of stuff, among other things, we would either directly or indirectly explore, okay, well, how do I best relate to you? And over time, I learned to adopt some of these things. I didn't really think of it in terms of adopting love languages. That wasn't, the thought process at all. But it was the result. It was the net result. I was learning how, things like quality time and acts of service and physical touch and so forth really do lend to the development of the relationship. So just because somebody comes in with, a certain number of ways of expressing themselves doesn't mean they're always going to stay that way. It also doesn't mean that they're going to fall away. They could actually increase. It can work either direction, is my point.
I agree. I was going to say one of the things that I know happened in my marriage was I am very, words of affirmation is one of them, but acts of service is huge for me.
Oh, is it?
So I love when someone does something special for me,
mm-hmm.
but I also go out of my way to do things special for other people. Or even if it's paying the bills, that's an act of service that I'm doing for our marriage. Or if it's the laundry, it's an act of service that I'm contributing to our marriage, or grocery shopping, or hiring the lawn service people. I mean, whatever. When I'm doing that for our marriage, I'm thinking of this as a gift or an act of service toward our marriage. Now, oftentimes you can listen to how people talk and you'll know what it is that they really desire. But if you're not tuning in and paying attention, then obviously you miss the cues. But I remember in the first year or two of my marriage, I'd be running around the house doing laundry and getting the cooking done and cleaning and just doing all the housewifey kinds of things. I had a full-time job too, so fitting in all the housewifey things was in between everything else I did.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And my husband's sitting in front of the couch, and he's watching something on TV. And it was a weekend. It's not like there was anything wrong with that, and I didn't resent him for it. But as I'm whizzing behind the couch, behind him a million times throughout a Saturday, he'd go, "Do you ever stop?" And to me, I'm like, "Are you kidding? I can't stop. I have things to do." But he said this over and over and over, like, "Why don't you come and sit down and watch TV with me? Or do you want to see a specific movie with me? We'll rent it." And to me, I just couldn't be bothered stopping to even ask that question because I was in go mode.
So here we have an example of acts of service versus quality time, and one was on one and one was on the other.
Exactly. And he was setting up the circumstances so we could have quality time together, and I didn't know that that's what he was doing. And it took a lot of conversation between the two of us for me to finally interpret, when you're asking me, it's not like you're mad at me because I'm doing other stuff. You're truly wanting to be with me. And he's like, duh. And to me it was like, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
I thought he was just watching me whiz around the house and somehow I almost felt like he was being critical of me or judging me because that's what I was choosing to do. But when I knew he really wanted and desired to spend time with me, and his love language was quality time, which I didn't know at the time, I went, all right, I'll tell you what. How about if after dinner I don't do any more housework and I just sit and do whatever you'd like to do, and we can pick a movie, go out to a movie, whatever. And he's like, oh, I'd love it. And that's what we started to do. I started to make a point to be available to give quality time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I'm kind of a natural doer, and I'm always thinking in terms of getting something accomplished. And so for me to switch gears was a big deal.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
But it was a conscious effort, and when I started doing it, it really it gave me a warm and fuzzy, because I went, oh, he's able to receive my love for him because he knows I stopped everything I was doing, and he knows I have a list that's so long it could never be accomplished in a weekend, but he knew I stopped what I was doing to be with him. And so that had meaning for him, but it also had meaning for me that he wanted to spend time with me.
Absolutely.
Because for me, if you want to spend time with me, I'm thinking he should get into the kitchen and say, how can I help you cook dinner? Because that's an act of service. Or would you like me to do the laundry this weekend? That would be an act of service, and he didn't do those things.
That's why I've really gotten an appreciation through the development of our relationship with Louise that it's not just one thing. You really want to do as many of the 5 as you can. And absolutely. If you're doing as many of the 5 as you can and she's doing as many of the 5 as you can, between the two of you, you're covering it a lot of the time. And the few times when there's like a disconnect going on, now that I have that list, I'll actually look at the list and I'll say, okay, what's missing? But most of the time you can just pick from what you know has always worked, and you go to one of them, and that reestablishes stuff. So it's really all of them. It's drawing on all of them.
And I kind of want to throw in that for me, this really does have an element of law of attraction kind of integrated into it. Mm-hmm. Because, like, for me, when I started shifting my thought process, like, oh, my husband does want to spend time with me, now it shifted my focus, like, he wants to spend time with me. It caused me to feel loved by him. It caused me to feel appreciation. Which, of course, helped me to be in a better vibrational space when I was with him, and the same with him with me. But I can tell you, even with my boss, my feelings towards him have been elevated like you wouldn't believe in the last 24 hours, and it causes me to want to be a more attentive executive assistant.
Okay,
it makes me feel like he does like me. It's like letting go of that question. You have no idea the burden that has been weighing on me for 2 years.
I'm glad you were able to let go of it.
Yeah, being able to let that go and know I am appreciated by him, well, that causes me to focus my energy towards him differently. It causes me to focus my energy toward the team of people I support differently, because I don't feel like I have to work so hard to earn his appreciation. Now, someone else might go, well, you never had to do it. Well, that's just who I am. That's the thing that drives me. Mm-hmm. It's my love language.
Right, yeah.
And so even though I didn't necessarily receive it in the way that is my love language, because it's like he somehow broke through by putting the right combination of sweet words in the card to me. But then I got to tell you, it was the level of the gift. Because I went, nobody gives a giant gift like $200 gift card unless they really appreciate somebody. Because he could have gotten away with $25 and gone, yeah, that's my obligatory gift to my executive assistant, and been done with it.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He went above and beyond.
He did.
And, since giving is not my thing, I got to tell you, the giving thing, it kind of worked. It got my attention. Because it wasn't just a little something. It was a big something.
It was. It was really big. Yeah. It reminds me of something.
The whole thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Anyway, go ahead.
No, finish up what you're saying.
I was going to say, the whole experience of receiving this from him has just changed my focus. And to me, that anytime I'm dealing with focus, I know I'm dealing with law of attraction.
Right.
Because when I focus differently law of attraction has something new or different to bring into my world. So I have a feeling wherever's coming is going to be really good, because I know that I'm in the process of creating something awesome for myself, because I have shifted my focus from feeling kind of alienated and how come he's not giving me just something to let me know that everything's cool between us, to, oh, he really likes me. This is so great. I mean, that's such a different vibration. So different. It feels so different, and it feels good.
Well, it is different, and it's a glad thing. It's a happy thing that you found it and you made that connection, and now you understand. You have a basis for the communication, which is great. The whole story reminds me of something that Louise taught me. Louise used to, when she was in her 20s, she used to live at a ski resort in Vermont, and while she was there, she basically lived by waiting tables. She taught me something that I didn't know. I'll see if you know. Do you know that the word tips, like a tip that you leave for a waiter or a waitress, that tips is actually an acronym?
I did not know that.
I didn't know it either. TIPS stands for To Ensure Proper Service.
That's fascinating.
So, in truth, what we really should be doing when we're tipping somebody is we should be tipping them before the service, not afterward. Because if you tip to ensure proper service, you get better service. And the example Louise would give is she remembered one year where there was this guy who came to the ski resort, and he came to her one day and gave her some really nice amount of money. I don't remember what it was, and said, just make sure my coffee cup is never empty. And you can bet your bottom dollar for the rest of the season she made sure that his coffee cup was never empty.
That's fascinating.
He ensured proper service. So if you look at it that way, now tips becomes a law of attraction thing. You're focusing on, let me give you something in advance to show I appreciate you, and I'm hoping you'll show your appreciation in return with the service I'm looking for.
Cool.
Yeah. Very, very similar to what you were talking about. Not the way you were thinking about it, but very similar to what you were talking about.
Wow. And so I just follow wherever my thoughts go, well, I do also edit myself. But
well, that's a good thing.
This is a good trail. I was also thinking about, in our topic we have the word celebration. And I realize everybody celebrates differently.
True.
And for me, I don't require going out and doing something big. If somebody energetically and with lots of inflection in their voice lets me know they're really happy for me, that to me covers my sense of celebration. Now, somebody else might feel that they want to bring me a gift in a helium balloon, that says happy blah, 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 whatever the occasion is. And I have to tell you, I think it's sweet, but here's my way of thinking, and heaven forbid my family's listening, because then they'll never do this for me. But
no.
If they bring me a helium balloon, I'll think to myself, okay, so is this going to hit the ceiling fan? Is it going to bust up in a bunch of pieces? If it doesn't hit the ceiling fan, because I have ceiling fans in every room, it's eventually it's just going to wither and die. How long do I have to keep this? And it's just a something. And I know it's meant as a sweet gift, and I've given helium balloons too, but that's how I feel about gifts. I think about so many things in a practical way, that if somebody gives me a gift, sometimes it's a burden.
Oh, dear.
Because it's something else I have to figure out where to put it. And I know that sounds terrible, but I got to tell you, that's my truth. That's my internal dialogue when I receive gifts. Now, if it's something I really love, that's a whole other story. If somebody really thought about what would be meaningful for me, and I know they put a lot of thought behind it, well, then I have all wonderful feelings, associated with it. But to me, it's for somebody to recognize that words of affirmation is my big hot spot, if they just say the right thing in the right tone of voice, we're good. They don't have to spend any money on me. They don't have to take me out to eat. They don't have to buy me a gift. words, and I'm good to go.
Note to self, no helium balloons for Wendy.
Now, of course, there are other people, like my little sister. She loves to buy helium balloons. And now that I think about it, I've never bought her a helium balloon. That would probably be the thing that would just, turn her on. You're like, oh, Wendy really loves me because she bought me helium balloons. Because, she buys them all the time.
That's funny, though.
She's a different kind of sister, But it's just, to me, it's just kind of funny when you really get to know what really turns people on and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Because someone who's a gift giver would probably never in a million years think that me receiving a gift actually feels like a burden on occasion.
Probably not. I mean, I can conceive of, somebody really gets to know you well, and they see how you react to getting gifts, and so over time they come to the conclusion, well, that's probably not the best way to express my love or appreciation or acknowledgement or whatever. But you're right. Initially, that's not something that would come.
I have learned to fake the appreciation for gift giving. I think I'm pretty good at it now.
So basically, you're faking it until you make it, and it's up to the other person to be able to tell the difference.
Kind of. But, it's like I really love quality time. Like when somebody wants to do something special for me, I'll say, let's just spend time together. Let's go out and share a meal.
Mm-hmm.
That's sufficient. I don't require a whole lot more than that.
Yeah.
I have been told I was a cheap date before, and they didn't mean it in an ugly way. It was because I don't drink alcohol, so it doesn't cost a lot to take me out, but just take me to a fun place and spend time with me and say sweet things to me, and like, you had me at let's go out to eat,
Louise always, in the early part of our relationship, she would say that to me a lot, usually because she wanted us to do something. And so her way of encouraging me to do it would be to say, remember, I'm a cheap date.
So I'm not the only one.
You're not the only one, no. Or if she wanted to stop off, I mean, she's like many women, she likes to go to a place where there are a bunch of retail gift store type things, like in a resort or something like that, and go through all the stores and see what's there and find knickknacks and all kinds of things. And it's not my favorite thing to do, but the thing she always reminds me of, I'm always quick. It never takes me more than 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and I'm done with the entire thing. And it's true. She's really quick. She knows exactly what she's looking for. So it's not like I'm expecting to spend the next 2 hours waiting while she goes through the various shops. It's going to be very quick. But nevertheless, that's her interest and it's not my interest. And so we found a way to make it work. And the way we made it work was really simple. She goes through a few shops, and then we find a nice restaurant where I can have some clam chowder, and I'm happy. I'm happy as a clam.
But, it sounds as though you and Louise took some really conscious time or conscious effort to communicate and express to one another what your likes and dislikes are, enough so that you would know how to do that for each other or be that for each other or express that for each other.
Oh, yeah, right from the beginning. In fact, that to me is the getting to know you part. I don't know if that's the way it is for other people, but for me, getting to know her was getting to know her likes and dislikes, getting to know what her interests are, getting to know, what makes her tick. Because I knew the more I understood about that, the better chance I had of contributing to, from my side of the relationship. Mm. Now, I don't know what other people do, but that's what I do.
Well, to me, expression comes in so many different forms. It comes in each one of these love languages. But it's like when you really express your heart to somebody and you do your best to do it in a way that, like, they can receive, then you have, like, real communication. Because expression that's one way is not real communication, not to me. This is true.
Yeah.
It's just one way.
That's right.
But real communication was when my mother put her hand on my father's hand and spoke to him because he melted. Mm. And it's like he could hear her. And then his response, you could tell he heard her and now responded accordingly. Mm-hmm. And it's like that to me was real communication.
Oh, yeah. That was very powerful communication.
Absolutely. And when I stopped what I was doing, I stopped my to-do list to spend time with my husband,
Yep.
we really communicated.
Sure.
And we'd sit on the couch and we would hold hands, and, we would pause the TV during commercial breaks because we had so many things now to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So, we really were able to get at the heart of communication and making a connection because we were expressing ourselves to one another in a way we could each be heard and received. And that, to me, is just, that in itself is a beautiful gift of expression. It's phenomenal.
Oh, yeah, especially if you're doing it in a way that the other person loves and appreciates, because then it has not just meaning, it has impact. The impact is so much stronger when it's of a particularly meaningful nature to the person you're reaching out to in whatever way it is. The impact has everything.
It's the impact. You're
Yeah.
right. It's the impact.
Oh, yeah. That impact is everything. That impact is how I know that my relationship with Louise continues to go strong. The impact comes back to me in various ways. It comes back in direct signals. It comes back indirectly. And the fact that it keeps coming back to me tells me, yep, you're on the right track. Keep it going. Just keep doing those things.
Very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's how you end up, or at least how I ended up, with a good, reassuring, I can count on it relationship. And I know I can count on it. I know I can count on Louise for the rest of our lives. I'm 100% certain of it. Not even a shadow of a doubt, which is the ideal LOA position, by the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, when you're not doubting and you don't add resistance to that subject, then manifestation is inevitable.
And cool, too.
It's always cool to get that what you desire.
It is. It's great.
Yeah.
It's great. It's like all it takes is one of those things to just kind of make your day, Because, I think I've told you one of the things that Louise and I do at the end of the day is we'll do 3 gratitudes. What are 3 things that happened either to you or that you did today or whatever that were good, that had a positive spin on them? And we started it early on mainly just to kind of reverse the whole negative consciousness that we're all in because of the way society works. But over time, it has turned into just something we do because it feels good. And also it does, help change the consciousness. But just by focusing on even one thing that worked well that day, not only are we remembering that it happened, not only are we reliving it, but we're doing it together. And so we both benefit from it. That's what's so cool. So if I come up with 3 and she comes up with 3, we just came up with 6 between us. We just relived 6 good things that happened that day. It's like doubling it. Double your fun, right?
That's very nice. Well, and if one of you is sharing and the other one's listening, it's like the other one gets to go, maybe I hadn't thought about that, or that maybe that's something I could focus on.
Oh, yeah, we actually usually say it out loud. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. You're right, that did happen. That was great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it just reinforces it. So not only are we getting the experience of reliving what happened, but the other person is getting a chance to live it, especially if they weren't around for, whenever the thing happened, whatever it was. If it gives us the chance to okay, I'm going to tell you again what happened. I know I told you earlier, but here's what happened again. This is when so-and-so did such and such, and it led to great result. And, oh, yeah, that's great, Now we both lived it.
So at Christmas time, I was talking with the older sister. There are 2 younger sisters. I refer to one as the baby sister and the other as the...
I just realized you're going to have to be really quick because we've got about 50 seconds left.
Okay. So I said to the middle sister, how come you never text me? You always text the other sister, but not me. And she had some reason, and I just went, well, I'd like you to text me too, because I feel like we don't see each other often. Well, today she texted me, like, hey, how you doing? Have you recouped from Christmas? And it was like I asked for what I wanted. That was my expression, and I got what I asked for. And it was like, that was just a fun little something. So there's my gratitude for the day.
Fantastic.
I asked for what I wanted, and it came back to me almost immediately.
Well, I don't know if we're going to have the same topic tomorrow, but I'm certainly looking forward to it. I hope you are, too.
Yes, I'm going to come back, and we'll figure out something good to talk about.
All right. We hope you come back, too, tomorrow here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye now.